Heritage Kitchener Committee meeting of 2022. Hard to believe we're already at the end of the year. So I see that we are now streaming live, so we can go ahead and get started. Thank you, Mariah. So I'll call this meeting to order, and we will begin with our heritage permit application, HPA 2022 V027, which is the Victoria Park Boathouse, proposed alterations, including a new addition and patio. And so I will pass the floor over to Deeksha to provide a brief presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just request Mariah to pull up the presentation, please. Awesome, thank you. Could we have slide 3, please? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So the first item on our agenda is the Victoria Park Boathouse Heritage Permit application. So the building is located within the Victoria Park Neighborhood Heritage Conservation District and is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. It is not a Group A building, and it has seen extensive modifications over the past few years. Currently, the boathouse is vacant and is not being used. The proposal that we have before us today intends to open it up as a restaurant and venue space. This will sort of restore the boathouse back to its original intended purpose, and since it was always meant to be used as an amenity space. But in order to do that, there are some changes that are needed. Staff have been working with the applicant over the past few months to inform some of these changes. The 3 main changes that are proposed are some alterations of doors and window openings and introductions of new ones, a new rear addition on the eastern rear side of the building, and a new cantilevered patio that will extend over the lake. Next slide, please. As you can see, that is what the proposal will look like. A scoped heritage impact assessment was required for the proposed development and concluded that the building, the park, and the Heritage Conservation District will not be adversely impacted due to the proposed development. It also suggested certain mitigation measures which have been integrated into the design of the overall development. To undertake the proposed work, a site plan application is also required, which will be forthcoming in the next few months. And the conditions associated with this heritage permit application will ensure that they're tied into the site plan application, so approvals remain consistent throughout the whole process. We also have the heritage consultant and the architect here with us today with a presentation and to answer any questions that the committee might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Deeksha. I'm going to now pass it over to Matt Bullen and Drew Hauser and Kanika Kushal, who are going to provide a brief presentation as well. And then we will move to committee questions. So to the architects.
Hello, everyone. Kanika, I think we had decided that you were going to take the lead on the first part of the presentation. Just to give some of the context of the site.
Yes. Hi, Matt. Hi, everyone. This is Kanika Kaushal, and I'm a heritage specialist with McCallum Sather Architects. Just wanted to check with the committee. Okay, here we go. I just wanted to confirm if I was allowed to screen share. Okay. Thanks, Diksha, for that quick overview. Start with the presentation now. Can we move to the second slide? Just to give a quick introduction to our site, it is the Boathouse building, which is located within the Victoria Park HCD. And the existing Boathouse building that we see today was built in, sorry, something happened. The existing building that we see today was built in 1929. It has undergone modifications over the past few years, and like Diksha mentioned, a lot of the elements today that we see, they are a consequence of those later additions or alterations. It is an existing red brick building with cottage style roof, and most of the elements that we see, including the windows, they're not original. The doors and windows that we see today, they're not original to the building. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, in terms of just to give some context to the site, on the right, you'll see the HCD plan boundary, the Victoria Park HCD, and annotated is our subject site, the northeast, sort of located northeast to the of the HCD, the edge, northeast edge of the HCD. Victoria Park is designated as a public open space. So when we go through the definition of an open space within the HCD, it talks about a comparatively large area without having obstructions across across all views and vistas of distant features. So when we look at the Boathouse building as of today, I think the most critical aspect when we were going through the entire proposal was how anything and everything would impact the existing views to the lake, and also the views from the adjacent sort of streets to the Boathouse building and to the lake. Next slide, please. Very quick historical sort of background to the site. So originally there was an existing 5-bay wood construction boathouse, which was built in the late 1800s, which obviously deteriorated over time and was demolished in 1929 when it was replaced with a new 2-story boathouse building designed by architect Charles Nuttall. And this particular building was used to store canoes and rowboats. And a lot of times we'll see some images, which is also shown as part of the HI. Ice skating was one of the activities that happened next to the Boathouse building. So it was a very active building, very social at the same time. In 1967, there was a fire that destroyed the 2nd story. And eventually, the Boathouse building was redesigned with the 60s style roof that we see today to replace that 2nd story. Next slide, please. When we look at the cultural value, as mentioned before, the Victoria Park, it's a Victorian era park, which was designed in the Romantic style with mature trees, landscape, streetscapes, bridges, monuments, and architectural features that were typical of that period. So again, the focus is always to maintain and preserve these elements. Next slide, please. While we were reviewing the proposal, which was the washroom addition and upgrades to the windows and just adding more openings to the building, we were looking at the applicable planning policies and guidelines. So this is just a quick summary of what all we had looked at. It was the Victoria Park HCD guidelines at the sort of the municipal level with the City of Kitchener official plan and the urban design manual. And we also looked at the standards and guidelines for the conservation of historic places at the provincial level. Next slide, please. I'll just hand over to Matt now for just to go over the proposed development. Thanks.
Thank you, Kanika. And thanks for everyone for the opportunity to speak with the committee today. I think we're all very excited to be involved with the project, such a prominent location, and such just an interesting and dynamic site in the city. One of our biggest drivers here outside to bring back the vibrancy to this location has actually been accessibility, and how can we maintain a lot of the existing character of this building and in and around the building, maintain existing sight lines and some of those romantic stylized elements that Kanika was speaking to, but also give it accessibility in a number of different ways. Barrier-free accessibility is a big driver there, but just that idea of allowing for more inclusive and dynamic events and engagement by the public and all different types of public users, with, of course, a vendor and an operator of the space that is going to be able to keep it, very sustainable and vibrant and successful, I think, is probably what everyone's objectives would be aligned on. So again, you'll see from some of the renderings and views that we'll be looking at today, we've really tried to preserve the existing roof lines, have primarily the washroom addition, which again is there to serve occupant loads and meet current building code regulations on number of washrooms required. Also, we will be incorporating barrier-free, full accessible, universal barrier-free washrooms within this space. And that's where, again, the need programmatically to be able to expand where we thought was going to be the least impactful area, which we can see here on the left of this aerial view, to create both some contained areas for washrooms expansion, as well as some minor service space for the kitchen. That was sort of important. Another one that you can sort of see here on based on this view is in the front, we will be introducing a new, more formalized entrance, and actually having that entrance very slightly sink down from each side, so that we can create one unifying level across the entire space. As you may know, anyone who's been in there are different levels, particularly at the doors stretching off the back. They drop off actually very abruptly. And what we're trying to do both in the front of the space to bring people in, as well as with the deck extension that we're going to be sending out the back, is have it really be something that is very accessible, flat, and is able to avoid things like tripping hazards and things of that nature. Outside of some of the details that we can get into, and I won't read through any of them here, but we are I think largely looking forward to having a conversation today, getting some questions, hopefully providing some clarity on, again, what our intentions are for both the design and the overall vision for the project. And then again, looking forward to continuing to work with city staff and various other members of our team to execute what we're pretty excited about here. So next slide. Just as an overall sort of site plan view of what we're doing here, you can see the rather large and sizable extension of a deck. You can see down at the bottom of the page, and it's a little bit tricky to see on your screens, but there is a sort of dark shaded zone there at the bottom, which it does represent the water surface itself. And you can see that extension of the new structural deck element that will extend past the armor stone retaining wall out over top. And that again is to push and give more vibrancy to that outdoor space, so that can be enjoyed and engaged by a lot of community residents through all different seasons, particularly in the summer and spring and fall. And then again, we have tried to open up the internal spaces, which you can see there with the new walls, so newly constructed walls in black, and then the existing walls in gray. Sort of gives you a sense. And again, you can see some of the internal workings of added washrooms, particularly the barrier-free washrooms sort of centralized to the space, and then some additional washrooms over to the right side with that new addition. One of the other things just to look at here, we are looking for ways that we can open up some of the openings. We will be taking a lot of care anywhere we're closing off an existing opening. We're going to be doing that in a way that still allows you to see where that opening was, by utilizing some of the brick and doing an inset detail. So that's something we've been working with McCallum Sather on to make sure we do that. And also in terms of just the patterning and the way that we're punching windows and expanding openings to, again, allow for greater accessibility in and out of the space and use throughout the seasons across those spaces. Having those openings fall in a natural way where they accommodate maybe a couple openings and just knock out a portion between them. That's a big driver for us as well. Next slide. So again, you can see that a little bit here in the elevation. And again, one thing we have really tried to do is be really sensitive to that existing character of the space. And use actually quite a bit of restraint in that regard. Make sure we get our accessibility, make sure we get that needed amenity from building code and what have you. And then even as you can see in the second elevation down, having this expanded space actually be quite subtle and not overbearing, set back from the main elements of the building on Jubilee Drive was a big driver here that we've worked towards. Yeah, that's next slide, please. So again, just to finish up here with some conclusions, and I'll let Kaneka jump in as well if needed. But you can see from this view in particular where we are having that deck structure cantilever out and over. We are pretty excited about the dynamic space that will be available out there. As an amenity in the park. And again, there's lots of technicalities that are going to go into this, lots of detailing that we're already working through. We've had conversations with a variety of different approvals authorities, including GRCA and the city, just about logistics around some of the stuff. So there is work to be done, but quite a bit of confidence in terms of how we're going to execute this and make it work and again, bring this new vision for the site to life. So again, happy to hang on and answer any questions or turn it back to Kaneka if she has anything else to conclude with.
All right, thank you very much. To members of the committee, are there any questions for any of the delegates? Peter.
Yeah, can you tell me what the occupancy load of the final occupancy load of the building is, with the patio and the interior seating as well?
Yeah. So I mean, we are in the process of just finalizing that, but obviously we had to take some of those numbers into account when determining our washroom fixture count, requirements for fire alarm, what have you. We've actually consulted with the building department on that as well. But the indoor space, where we're working up against a 150 person maximum occupant load. And that again relates to fire alarm requirements and some other things from a fire side. And then outdoor, we're wanting to match that, actually get a little bit higher seasonally, again, when it makes sense, probably closer to 150 or even 200 on the outdoor space. And yeah, so that answers your question.
Thanks. Other questions? Also note that James Barr is also in attendance to answer any questions that the committee may have. Jean?
Thank you, Chair Sam. A question to the delegation. With the overview, it's been stressed about the maintenance of the romantic landscape and the concern for the age of the park, and I appreciate that. And also what I'm now going to allude to is the addition, and I do understand the need that is required if one is going to make a successful go of a restaurant and so on. And so washrooms will be important. So this addition, I'm not quite sure, when we talk about preserving the roof line, why we are ending up with a flat roof. And also, in my opinion, just looking at the slides, the addition looks somewhat sort of a box to the existing building. Now, I realize we're not supposed to be imitating the old. However, it strikes me as quite a modern addition to this older structure. So I wonder if one of the delegates could elaborate on this addition.
I don't mind speaking to that briefly, and of course anyone else can jump in, but you're right, and it definitely is a more contemporary style addition, and that was done for a number of reasons. One is, again, not to try to replicate or create a new roof line that could not only fundamentally change the character of what we see there now today, but also open up opportunities where even from a detailing and maintenance standpoint, there can be sometimes those details when you're trying into a roof, particularly that the boathouse has, which is quite unique in its character, that 60s style with pop-ups on it. So that's one of the reasons we avoided it. Another is actually, in fact, because the uses that are in that small structure are primarily utility, we're actually able to create a significantly lower ceiling than we would need or want in other areas of the space. And that affords us a couple things. One, we can actually have the structure, the actual top of that by doing it in that square, more orthogonal way, we can actually slip it underneath the existing roof lines and the existing soffit of the existing roof structure, which is about 10 feet. We can get it underneath there. Not only that, even as we've worked through with our mechanical consultants and others, the building is not, definitely needs updating to the internal services, the HVAC, various other things. And because of the way we've done the flat roof, and we can actually set the roof down even further than the overall structure would appear, it actually gives us an ability to hide and protect some, frankly, not very nice looking mechanical equipment within that space, and be a very sort of neat little suitcase, if you will, to the overall building. So those are some of the drivers to that.
If I may, so what you're telling me is that the whole of the addition won't be set out, that some of it will be under the roof, the existing roof, the
Correct.
slope.
Correct.
Okay. Thank
Correct.
you.
Yeah. And I should note too, there was different strategies that we took of even having a completely standalone structure versus not. But again, just as we've worked through all the space planning and different dynamics and different efficiencies, connecting them to and slipping it under so that it was still, it's very light touch connection, just sort of touching up against it. We're not blowing out any walls on that side of the building or doing anything that's going to be disruptive from a long-term impact standpoint. But doing it in the way we have definitely does create the most efficient approach for sure.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for our delegations? All right, seeing none, this is an item that requires a motion. So we have a staff recommendation. Peter, is that a hand to move the recommendation, or did you have a last minute question?
Sorry, I had a last minute.
Okay. Not a problem. Go ahead, Peter.
Thanks, and I think, Jean, that you hit on an interesting point, and I just wanted to just sort of look further at that point, and that is the nature of the addition. Now, before we talk about it, I have to say that this is a beautiful project. Like, it's really wonderful to see. This building has a history of being sort of resurrected again, in another form for another generation, and it's wonderful to see. And the some of the technical problems that you've solved is great. And what is very attractive about it is the openness of the views and the sort of publicness of being seen to and from the building. It's excellent, but I think that where that I would see where there would be perhaps some room for some more design question is on the addition itself. And I think it's kind of for me, it's kind of a two-part problem. One is the language of the addition itself, and I understand the technical reasons of how you ended up at that solution. But I still think the reading of it is very difficult. When I first looked at it, it looked like a single piece of mechanical equipment on the side of the building. It was that kind of, it's so stark and so plain and so different. I couldn't quite figure out what it was. It didn't have a language for me that said, oh, this is a functioning addition to this building in the way that it is. So I think in the articulation of it, between the two forms, it's a little stark, and that detracts from its reading. The other thing is that the three elevations of the building are so open to the public, so open to the views. The fourth elevation, where the washroom addition is completely blank. And that in itself, I think in that location may be problematic, right? If anything could be due to enhance either the sense of eyes in the street or sense of visibility there, it's difficult to do given the program of the washroom. But right now it's nothing right on that side, and I think that may be a bit of a challenge in the future. But other than that, I think it's a terrific problem, terrific project. Like, congratulations to everybody involved in this one. I think it's great.
Great. Maybe just a quick response, and I really do appreciate that feedback. I think for us, coming into it, that has been anyways the historical, call it service side of the building where there was a lot of the stuff for that utility. So when in some ways we're trying to clean it up and contain it really in a better and more sensitive way. But I think it's a good point for us. Actually, there have been lots of discussions amongst the team and the client group about what could be done to animate that space. And I think we are looking at some options in terms of the type of cladding we're using. One is a very sustainable, actually, it was referenced in the report, matrix cladding system that actually has some PV potential to it. So we're looking at that, and obviously looking at that in terms of some of the feasibility logistics of our detailed design. The other is, potentially engaging in some type of public art along that face to create a little bit more engagement. And then also looking at the relationship it has to the adjacent pergola structure immediately adjacent, and how we can form a relationship there. So I think take those points for sure into play as we continue to refine the design.
Great, thank you.
Oh.
Any other last minute questions?
I just want to make one last comment. The roof that was put on this building in the 60s, I'm pretty sure was done by John Lingwood, who we're going to see in the next the next application. So it's a very neat thing. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. It's always nice to have a meeting theme. So with that, if there are no further questions or comments, we'll move to the recommendation stage. So if anyone would like to move the recommendation in the staff report, please indicate thus. No one. There we go. Councillor Gazzola, at his last committee meeting. We'll move the recommendation. As written in the report, Councillor Gazzola?
Yes, that's fine. Yes, thanks.
Great. Thank you. All right, so the recommendation as it reads is that pursuant to Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act, the Heritage Permit Application HPA 2022V027 be approved to permit the alterations of the boathouse the new addition and patio on the property municipally addressed as 57 Jubilee Drive in accordance with the supplementary information submitted with the application and subject to the following conditions. 1, that the scoped heritage impact assessment be approved by the Director of Planning prior to the issuance of this permit and final site plan approval. 2, that the final signage and any additional lighting be detailed on a site lighting plan to be reviewed and approved by the city's heritage planner prior to the issuance of the final site plan approval. 3, that the design and content of the commemorative plaque be reviewed and approved by the city's heritage planner prior to the issuance of the final site plan approval. 4, that the final proposed materials for the proposed alterations to the boathouse, new addition, and patio be shown on detailed building elevation plans to be reviewed and approved by the city's heritage planner prior to the issuance of this permit and final site plan approval. And 5, that the final building permit be reviewed and approved by the city's heritage planner prior to the issuance of a building permit in accordance with the final approved site plan. Any comments or concerns about the recommendation and motion on the table? Great, because I don't really want to read it again. Just as a heads up, if the application does receive unanimous consent from the committee, it can be processed under delegated approval authority following the committee meeting. Otherwise, it goes to council on December 12th. So we will now vote, as we are hopefully accustomed to doing so on Zoom via roll call. So Councillor Gazzola, you're first.
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor Michaud.
In favor.
Thank you. Martin.
In favor.
Thank you. Shannon.
In favor.
Thank you. Jean.
Yes.
Thank you. Peter.
In favor.
Thank you. I'm next. I am in favor as well. Ilona.
In favor.
Thank you. And Danny.
In favor.
Thank you. Have I missed anyone? All right, not hearing anyone that I've missed. That does pass with unanimous consent. So it will be processed under delegated approval authority following this meeting. All right, we're now going to move on to our next item, which is the draft scoped heritage impact assessment for 2219 Ottawa Street South and 808 Tressler Road, which is DSD 2022466. And Deeksha, you are up again with a brief presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just wait for the presentation to come back up. Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is a heritage impact assessment for the property addressed as 2219 Ottawa Street South and 808 Tressler Road. So the building that's on the currently on the property is on the inventory of historic buildings. So it's not designated and it's not listed. The development of the proposed development includes a subdivision, and it also includes the retention of the building on site. Currently, no changes are proposed to the building, and staff are not anticipating any changes to be proposed in the future. The house was assessed for designation criteria, and the HIA has concluded that the house does possess designation criteria under Ontario Regulation 906 and is recommending that it be designated under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The house in question is a mid-century house that was built in 1968 to 1969 by local architect John Lingwood. Staff currently are reviewing the HIA and asking for the committee's input at this time for any comments or concerns they might have as we continue to review the HIA and provide our comments back to the applicant. We do have the author of the Heritage Impact Assessment, Owen Scott, with us to answer any questions that the committee might have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Deeksha. So we're actually going to have Owen Scott provide, oh no, he's going to respond to questions from the committee. It does not appear that we have a specific, presentation from the applicants. Maybe, Deeksha, can you confirm that that's correct?
Yes, Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay.
Alderman Scott's
Perfect.
just here to answer questions. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Sometimes they present, sometimes they don't. So want to make sure that we don't deny anyone an opportunity. Okay, so we will pass this over then to the committee and open up the floor for comments. So as a reminder, it's a heritage impact assessment, which means that staff are requesting feedback from the committee on this heritage impact assessment, and there is no motion required. So please provide your feedback or specific questions that you may have. Jean.
Thank you, Chair Sam. Through to, it's Owen Scott who's here today, is it? Great. I just want to commend the detail of the assessment given by Mr. Scott, and not only about the house, the building itself, but the property surrounding it and the view shed that we are introduced to, and also the thoroughness of all the assessment tools, which gives a very strong case for heritage designation on this. But I have a question to Mr. Scott. But first I'll introduce it. So 2.0 of the mandatory recommendation, it's the opinion, your opinion, that the Shantz house, including garage, meets criteria for designation under Part 4. However, what I see in the report is the acknowledgement of the view shed. And I just don't know where in the heritage designation or how this would come about to acknowledge or ensure that the view shed is maintained. So maybe Mr. Scott could tell us how this, or where he sees, in his opinion, it should be introduced.
Mr. Scott, I'll pass it over to you if you want to respond to that.
Thank you. As far as the heritage attributes are concerned, the view sheds are listed as one of the heritage attributes. So if the property is designated and the heritage attributes are mentioned in that designation or outlined in that designation, then the view shed would be protected.
Right. So what you're saying is that in the statement for heritage designation, this would be necessary to be included?
It would be, yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Other questions or comments? Ilona?
So I would agree with Jean that this is a real gem. This is, a beautiful property that was hidden away by trees, and all of a sudden it's exposed. And I remember just even a few years ago noticing it, and I'm so glad that it's going to be preserved as part of this this landscape, as part of this subdivision. What I had to question about, though, is what the intended use will be down the road. And I know in the report it didn't say that, there isn't really anything specified at this point, but I just kind of wondered how this would fit in with the community that is being built there. So this question would be, I guess, for Mr. Scott.
Mr. Scott,
at the moment, we don't have a particular use in mind for the building, or the client does not have a particular use for the building in mind. That is something that's obviously going to have to be sorted out, and the city is going to have to be a major part of that.
Great, thank you. Other questions or comments on the report? Jean?
Thank you, Chair Seb. I have no further questions for Mr. Scott. I think he's made it very clear how designation should happen and what should go in the designation. And that's clearly outlined in the report. I'm very glad that he has a stated mandatory recommendation. But I do now have questions for staff. But I realize the protocol is to have our finish with Mr. Scott.
Yes. Given that we're being fairly quiet at the moment, I will allow you to proceed with your question, Jean, and we can come back to any further questions anyone has for Mr. Scott.
Thank you. I have a question for staff. So I made a site visit on this past Sunday, and there is the application for development sign, and on it is proposed that we see the house is going to be saved. Also in our agenda package, there's a fairly extensive drawing and outline of housing and parks and so on. So what is the meaning of that application for development sign? And this is to staff.
Yeah, Diksha, if you have an answer, please go ahead. I'm not sure if you or Garrett are going to have more information there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can take a stab at that. So currently there is an application in for a draft plan of subdivision. That's what the development application on the sign says. And that's being reviewed by different agencies within and outside of the city currently. And according to that draft plan of subdivision, staff had requested an heritage impact assessment be done for this property, which is what is in front of you today.
Right, thanks, Diksha. All right, other questions or comments? Jean.
I don't wish to hold up the questioning anymore for Mr. Scott. But I do have some other comments that I need to make with respect to this proposal.
Go ahead, Jean.
All right. I will confess that over 40 years, I have come along the road, which is now regarded as the name is Nectal Court. And so that comes right smack up to Trussler Road. And there were very few trees at that time. And there you could see this lovely, what I always thought was the Frank Lloyd Wright House of Kitchener. And there it was in all its presentation. Now we have the name of Mid-Century Modern. In my opinion, this is one of our most outstanding mid-century modern properties from a residence point of view. And Mr. Lingwood, a known architect, has many representative buildings across the city. And the other thing that I found with this particular house and the views, and I'm very thankful that Mr. Scott has identified views that they're significant and need to be maintained. For me, it always signified that here is where the rural township meets the urban, the city. And I think we need to maintain that idea. And there's a good indication from the development application and the drawings and so on that should be maintained. Again, I will reiterate that Mr. Scott has said that when we designate that these views would be part of the designation. I believe that on page 44, 1.8, summary statement and conservation recommendations are all there listed in an important fashion. Now, I think a bit of the challenge will be the interior of the building. Much depends on the use, but for sure the exterior, the landscape, and how we go about it. So I realize that maybe promoting and saying today that we should designate based on the consultant's recommendation may give a little unease to the planning process. However, I really need to know that we do not miss this building. And I wonder how many others on the committee have similar views about maintaining this particular building and the landscape. So it might be good to see a show of hands if we feel in as a committee that this is worthwhile carrying out the mandatory recommendation. And also, I would like to know when the right time to get, when it is the right time to designate, what is going to be the process? And I suppose that's staff's job to inform us. And also, we need to have this recorded in our minutes so that when a new committee comes, maybe this discussion will take, who knows, 4 or 5 years to accomplish the end result. Who knows if we'll be around and remember, this has been, this is what we said. So again, to staff, then what is the process? And let's have it recorded.
All right, let's separate those things out. So let's start first by discussing what the process for designation could be for this. So Deeksha, I think, is probably best able to discuss that, and then we can open it up for the committee to talk about sort of their thoughts as well. All right, so Deeksha.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the process of designation would be, we would start by bringing forward a report to Heritage Kitchener Committee for a notice of intention to designate. The committee would vote on it and that would go to council. Council would then take that recommendation or refuse it. If it's taken, then there is a 30-day appeal period where anyone can object to the notice of intention to designate. Assuming all goes well, council will then pass a bylaw that will include the sort of the lot and the heritage attributes to be protected. The bylaw does not come to Heritage Kitchener, it would go straight to council for approval. That's what the process would be.
If I may, I'm well aware that this is the process. And it would seem that the developer, because with the application, he's indicated that on the board that the house is going to be kept and that there's some, parks. I don't know about the view sheds. However, what is the process for in this whole thing about planning? Like, where does it fall so that, it's one thing to designate, but that's outside, but we have a large development here. So where in this process is the designation going to happen?
Sure. So through you, Madam Chair, and I'll ask Garrett to jump in. As part of the draft approval of conditions for the subdivision, designation of the property would be one of the conditions that would be listed. So the subdivision and the applicant would not be able to get the final approval unless the house was designated. So that's one of the conditions that we would put in, and that will ensure that the house is designated, and at the same time that we're working with the applicant to ensure that that happens.
Right. And the as mentioned by the consultant, and anybody that goes past this house will notice the view sheds that are really important. Where does that, like, how does that evolve in the planning process?
So through you, Madam Chair, as Mr. Scott pointed out, that would be listed in the heritage attributes that would then go into the bylaw, and that would be protected by the bylaw. So that's the process that we would follow to make sure that those views remain protected.
Very good. And also there was a letter from the ACO which was circulated. I trust that the ACO support for heritage designation. This letter is going to be part of the minutes of this meeting.
Yes, it should be. I forgot to read it in, but I will do that now. Everyone was sent earlier today a written submission from the ACO that was in your email. So you should all have that. And I see Mariah's unmuted to make a clarification.
Yes, I can confirm, Gina. I'll make sure that's recorded.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mariah. All right. Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none. Diksha, hopefully that provides you with enough feedback to move forward in the process. It seems like there's generally favor of this, and we appreciate the work of Owen Scott, so thank you. All right, so we will close out that item and move on to our next one, which is item 3.3, the Heritage Permit Application HPA 2022V026 for 170 David Street, demolition of rear addition, excavation for basement, and construction of new addition, DSD 2022442. Very themed meeting. We have Mr. Lingwood and Victoria Park all together here. So Jessica Vieira is going to provide us with our presentation. So Jessica, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the property municipally addressed as 170 David Street is designated under Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act and located within the Victoria Park Area Heritage Conservation District. It was in the past converted to a legal duplex, and my understanding is that neither unit is currently occupied. Next slide, please. So as stated, this permit application has three parts. First is the removal of an existing one-story rear addition, which is depicted in the slide. This would then allow for the excavation of the existing crawl space under the addition to expand the full height basement. And then finally, the last component of the proposed project is the construction of a new two-story rear addition. Next slide, please. So due to the orientation of the dwelling on the lot, a portion of the new addition will be visible from the street line. However, the addition is designed to be contemporary and distinct in style while incorporating resalvaged buff brick from the existing addition, as well as other appropriate materials like wood cladding, so that it's compatible with the existing dwelling and surrounding area as per the policies of the HCD plan. That concludes my presentation on this application. The applicant's available for any questions the committee may have for them. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Jessica. So Ben Ebby should be here. Yep. So they are here and just need to move over to the speaking part of the meeting, but they are in attendance to respond to questions from the committee. So any questions or comments from the committee on this item? Alona.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the stark contrast between the old house and the modern addition. And I just think that it's really, I mean, I know it's supposed to look distinctly different, but This is really quite a stark contrast, and I'm wondering why maybe there wasn't a roof added to it to sort of help it blend in a little bit more. A peaked roof that would help it blend in a little bit more with the building and the neighborhood.
The owner, this is actually a 3-story house. The existing house has a main floor, a second floor, and there's a third floor, which is, has a sloped ceiling. And the idea is to maintain the windows at the back of that addition, like the back of the house, so they can see it.
I would prefer to see a sloped roof on that, and in some way, I just find it's a very stark addition.
Great, thanks, Ilona. Peter.
Yes. Could you tell me whether whether you're recladding any of the existing building?
The intention is to leave the brick there. That's there now. Yeah.
Okay. It looked like there was some recladding going on. And
there is some areas where there is some siding. Maybe we could go back to the picture that was in the slide there. I really can't speak to whether it's in good shape or is letting water into the building right now. As mentioned, the building is unoccupied right now, and I wouldn't say it's heavily damaged, but certainly needs a new roof. And there's definitely some building envelope issues with the house. So we're hoping it's not too late to get in there and fix a few of those things.
But if I understand you, the intention is if the brick is in good shape, that it will be.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, this item does require a motion. So there is a recommendation in the staff report if anyone would like to make that motion. Peter?
Yes, I would like to motion acceptance of the report.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the recommendation in the staff report is that pursuant to Section 42 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Heritage Permit Application HPA 2022V026, requesting permission for 1, the demolition of an existing 1-story rear yard addition, 2, the excavation of a crawl space to construct a full height basement, and 3, the construction of a 2-story rear yard addition on the property municipally addressed as 170 David Street be approved in accordance with the supplementary information submitted with the application and subject to the following conditions. A, that the buff brick of the existing addition be salvaged during demolition. B, that the salvaged buff brick be reused in the construction of the new addition as per the architectural drawings submitted in attachment B, and C, that the final building permit drawings be reviewed and heritage clearance provided by heritage planning staff prior to the issuance of a building permit. That pursuant to Section 42 of, this is just in here twice. That's it. Okay, so if this receives unanimous consent from the committee, again, it can be processed under delegated approval of authority following the committee meeting. Otherwise, it goes to council on December 12th. Any questions or comments on the motion on the table? Just triple checking that it is exactly just twice and I didn't miss anything. Yeah, okay. All right, seeing no questions or comments, we will vote again by roll call. So Councillor Gazzola.
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor Michaud.
In favor.
Thank you, Martin.
In favor.
Thank you, Shannon.
In favor.
Thank you, Jean. Oh, you're muted, Jean, sorry.
In favor.
Thank you, Peter.
In favor.
Thank you. I'm next. I'm in favor. Ilona.
In favor.
Thank you. And Donnie.
In favor.
Thank you. Have I missed anyone? Great. I'm getting good at this. All right. So that passes unanimously. So it will be processed under delegated approval authority following the committee meeting. All right, so thank you to Ben Eby.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to our next item, which is our subcommittee updates. Quickly, before we have any discussion about what our subcommittees have been up to the last couple of months, I do want to let everyone know that I asked our subcommittee sort of point people to put together a written report of the activities that the subcommittees were working on and sort of plans for next steps so that the next Heritage Kitchener Committee has a record of all of the work that we've done over the last couple of years, and so they can continue to move forward. So Deeksha and Mariah are getting those immediately after the meeting today because I didn't send the email on time, but they will have all of that information so that it can be transferred to the next meeting. The next committee. Okay, so let's do some subcommittee updates. Robin is not here to talk about decolonizing heritage, but the committee the subcommittee is currently in sort of a waiting pattern until the next committee forms to move forward with their work. So that's an easy update. Martin, I'll call on you next.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't had the energy to do what I wanted to with this next kind of sport comes forward in the coming year. At least a starting point with kind of an agenda for where to move forward. I was looking for kind of more of a report by this time, but I just didn't have it in me.
Right, thanks, Martin. You were cutting out a little bit there, but I'll just summarize from our conversations and you can let me know if I missed anything. But you put together the report and there hasn't been much progress in the last couple of months. So looking forward to the next committee moving forward. Excellent, thanks, Martin. All right, Peter, I'll pass it to you next.
Yes, the Heritage Designation Subcommittee met on Wednesday, September 28th, and we continued our review of the buildings of heritage interest, non-designated. We continued our review. I think we did 9 properties in our review. And I think our total comes to 38, which I think is about 40% of the total number on the list that we've reviewed so far. Thank you, Lana, for coming along on the tour and helping out with our last meeting. And hopefully we can strike up this subcommittee again and carry on our enjoyable fun work.
Great, thanks, Peter. And Jean.
I thought perhaps that the report would be circulated, however. Promoting cultural heritage. So our job was to highlight heritage sites, particular emphasis on the heritage conservation districts, link with community groups who share a similar interest and purpose. And so with respect to the work plan, one of the interesting features was that of Willow Lake Park and Lower Dune, and all the background work is done. It's ready to go into motion for production. So that'll be next year. We did highlight the walking tours that Heritage Kitchener has that are available to people online. And we looked at how we're going to expand the method of circulation for these tours. And that remains a challenge. And then reaching out to municipal and volunteer groups to work on projects with interest in related cultural aspects. And so I was really pleased that we were able to join the garden tour, the KW Horticultural Society, for that event to highlight the front yards of the heritage homes in the Civic Center area. And then it was a wonderful success to have this walking tour of Lower Dune, and point out the pre-1800 history, the rural heritage of the area, the aspects, and with Councillor Michaud and myself working with a neighborhood group, they took it on themselves, and we had 2 great tours, October the 16th, 2022. So that was really good. Now looking forward, and I also want to thank Ilona for being the cheerleader in the background as to what we're doing. And so some of the things to do, as I mentioned, completing the Willow Lake sign, Willow Lake Park sign. We have some repair of signs for the old flax mill, the Upper Dune Heritage Conservation District. We need to see if we can explore the expansion of these walking tours, a different way of distributing them. We should continue looking out for groups of similar interest, reaching out and joining in projects. And then I do feel that we probably need to work with the region who are working on the Fisher-Holman Road, Blames Road construction project, and contacting the project manager on that, so that we're looking at the Indigenous site and to see, how we proceed on that. And I mean, it's not a matter of us going and saying, here's what we think should be done, but I think at least reaching out and talking about how we may work together and walk together on that one. Another one that I feel strongly about is identifying buildings and cultural sites that are missing from Heritage Kitchener inventory. Now, I realize that's Peter's committee, but I think we can be on the lookout for that too. And there may be an opportunity to join forces with like ACO or other heritage groups for providing workshops on how to maintain your heritage building. And KPL sometimes runs evening meetings on that. We used to have a lot of those, but we have reduced. It hasn't been so active in the last, what I see, maybe 5 to 10 years. That's the update.
Great, thanks, Jean. Councillor Michaud, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks. I just want to commend Jean and Ilona for all the hard work that you did on this subcommittee. And I just want to add to Jean's comments about the Lower Dune tour. It was a huge success. They did 2 tours that day, and both were, I think, relatively full. And these were 2 women that have never, I don't think they ever did something like this before, but they did it like real pros. And I think they're going to get a real uptick for Jane's Walk next year. When is it next year? Yeah, it would be when we have that. So this is a really exciting part of the Heritage Committee, as far as engaging and collaborating with with the neighborhoods and other citizens, and, as Jean said, the other groups within the city. So I'm really looking forward to continuing this with you. Jean, I hope you're staying on. You too, Leona.
Great, thank you, Councillor Michaud. Any questions or comments about any of our subcommittee reports or updates? Great. Well, thank you all for all of your work on the subcommittees this past couple of years. It's been a little while since we've had them, and I'm just delighted that they have been productive and we've had so many fruitful conversations as a result. And hopefully that will be something that the next committee will also take up, and we can continue all the great work that everyone has started. All right, so seeing no other questions or comments on this item, oh, Jean?
Oh, I would just like to give a bit of a farewell congratulatory message. Maybe you intended to do so, Sam, so it's up to you.
I was going to wait until information items for that, if that's okay with you, Jean.
Oh, yeah, fine.
Okay. I'm quite sure that our status updates is going to take about 30 seconds here, but I do want to do that item first. So, Deeksha, are there any status updates that we need to be aware of our best practices, our priorities, or our heritage impact assessments?
No, Madam Chair, no updates. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Deeksha. All right, Jean, I will pass the floor over to you for your farewell message.
Right. Well, first of all, I have to say it's been wonderful to have 3 very positive counselors and interested and supportive. Councillor Michaud, Councillor Chapman, and Councillor Gazzola. And I really want to now express, and I hope I can do this on behalf of the committee, I want to express Councillor Gazzola's great support. And this is his last meeting, I believe, at Heritage Kitchener. But it's been wonderful to have a strong voice at council to support the work of the Heritage Committee. No doubt we will miss you, and we look forward to your support in some way out there in the community. Maybe you could lead a walking tour for us, Councillor Gazzola. Or maybe you can bug us with things that we might be missing now that you're free and easy street. Or you know, maybe you can share those Italian trips that you intend to take in the future. So all the best to Councillor Gazzola.
Thanks for that, Jean. We can do some virtual snaps.
Thank you, Jay. Can I just say a word? If I could just acknowledge, I really want to thank the people, all these other people that I'm seeing in the screen. It is amazing how much you people have contributed to our community. I sit on the council, on the committee as a member of council, and so I mean it's really part of my job. But for you people, it isn't, and you devote a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it's our community that prospers because of all the hard work that you people do. And heritage is a tough subject to deal with. A lot of people see heritage as just junk, and let's tear it down, let's pave it over. And so it's really a tough fight that has to go on. In the past, we've missed the boat in some cases, but it's a fight that has to continue on. And so I really thank you people, because you are the grassroots of it, and hopefully going forward, I hope all of you, as many of you that can, will apply again and get put on the committee again. So on behalf of council, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Gazzola. I also, as chair, want to just express my thanks to all of you for showing up every month and bringing your questions and comments and thoughtfulness to this committee. I know it's a lot of work. We have, 300-page documents to read in preparation for our usually 2-hour meetings, sometimes less. often longer. So I appreciate all of you sticking around and being a part of it. It's a lot of work, but as Councillor Gazzola said, it's important work, and it's a big part of what makes our community special. So thank you to you all for all of the effort over the last couple of years. I know it's been a little tumultuous at times. We've had a lot of turnover, but we've made it through as a group, and we've done a lot of good work. And as I mentioned before, I'm really excited that we've had some subcommittees doing some additional work outside of the committee meetings, because we know the committee meetings are very full with the work planned. So it's nice to be able to see folks that are taking the things that they're passionate about and really pushing forward with those and making our community and the heritage around it a better place. And as Councillor Gazzola said as well, I hope that many of you will be sticking around for next year. And unfortunately, my schedule means that I unfortunately do have to step down, but I'm really excited to see all of the work that you continue to do. And I will be checking in on you. So hopefully I will see some of you back in January. Does anyone else want to say anything while we're being sappy? Jean.
Just a question, Sam. Are you saying that you are unable to return to the committee, or, oh, I see, due to your workload? Oh, sorry. You've chaired those meetings through the pandemic, which is quite the challenge. I have to say this, having support from staff is, at least when I sub-chaired, it was wonderful to have the staff around there with a, press the button, stop the button, turn the button on, and who's coming, and making notes and so on. So sorry to see you leave, Sam.
Thanks, Jane. I'm sad to see me leave too. Councillor Michaud, you have your hand up.
Yeah, Sam, I'm sorry to see you leave too. This is not good news. You've done a great job as chairing this committee, and everyone who shows up every month. This is a great committee to be on, and as I think Councillor Gazzola said, there's been a lot of tough decisions that have been made, and I look forward to being back on this, I hope, and seeing a lot of the faces that I see now. So wish you all the best, Sam. Keep in touch, and thank you to staff as well. Great job.
Thanks, Councillor Michaud. Yes, thank you to staff. They keep us going for sure. All right, last call before I miraculously allow you to all leave early and enjoy this very sunshiny afternoon. All right, so we have the Heritage Permit application tracking sheet attached to the agenda for your review. And that's it. So thank you all so much, and I will adjourn our meeting for the last time at 5:18. Have a good break, everyone.